Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. What I Will Do Without You, 90 Day Fiancé, Julia Trubkina and Brandon Gibbs' relationship could be in trouble following the loss of a family member. Julia Trubkina and Brandon Gibbs from 90 Day, The Last Resort recently lost their dog, Simba, and this sorrow could potentially harm their relationship. Brandon and Julia met through a mutual friend and fell in love. In 2020, they chose to marry in the United States, documenting their journey in 90 Day Fiancé Season 8. They encountered various challenges but were able to resolve most of them by the end of the season. Although Julia wasn't thrilled with the continuous involvement of Brandon's parents, Betty and Ron Gibbs, she decided to trust their love and move forward. Julia and Brandon moved out of the family home shortly after getting married. This newfound independence strengthened their relationship. Over time, Julia also improved her relationship with her in-laws by giving them another chance. However, just as things were starting to improve, Julia faced a serious deportation scare. This situation caused a great deal of stress for her and put a strain on her marriage to Brandon. Recently, Julia and Brandon appeared in 90 Day, The Last Resort Season 2 to address their marital issues. Through therapy, they were able to reconcile and work through their challenges. Julia and Brandon have faced many challenges in the past 5 years, but the loss of their pet, Simba, was the most painful experience they have ever had. In early May, Julia shared the tragic news on her social media, posting photos of her dog, Simba. She revealed that Simba had passed away after a long battle with his illness. In her post, Julia expressed her sorrow, saying, "Run on the rainbow, my boy. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me." She thanked Simba for being a good boy and declared, "My best, beloved boy, you will always be in my heart. Thank you for being in my life." Julia initially discussed Simba's health issues earlier this year. She shared several posts about her dogs, dedicating one of them to Simba. Julia wrote, "This week broke my heart into pieces. The doctors suggested putting Simba to sleep." She explained Simba had stopped eating and moving, adding, "We fed him every 2 hours with a syringe." Julia concluded her post by expressing hope, saying, "He is gaining strength and we will do the second operation." Despite her optimism about Simba's recovery, it is even sadder to see that Simba didn't make it. Julia and Brandon have had Simba since they were married. The couple adopted him shortly after they appeared on 90 Day Fiancé Season 8. They kept him at Brandon's family farm, where there were other German shepherds owned by his parents. A few years ago, Julia revealed that one of the main reasons she chose to remain connected to Brandon's farm was her pet, Simba. She stated, "It's only one reason I go back to farm, it's my dog, Simba." Julia mentioned that she had tried bringing Simba to her apartment but ultimately decided to keep him at the farm because it was better for him. Julia decided to keep Simba at the farm to maintain his healthy routine. She explained that when Simba was at home, she couldn't get much sleep, saying, "Him awake me like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. for go out." Julia found it difficult to keep Simba at the farm and expressed her deep love for him, saying, "I can't explain how I love him." She also mentioned her love for Brandon but noted that her love for Simba was different, comparing it to choosing between pizza and a burger and adding, "I don't know what I love over the rural Virginia horizon," casting long shadows across the Gibbs family farm. The barn was quieter than usual. No roosters crowed, no tractors rumbled, and the goats seemed subdued, almost as if they too understood that something had changed. Inside the modest farmhouse, Julia Trubkina stood at the window, arms wrapped tightly around her waist, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. Brandon Gibbs sat across the room, shoulders hunched, his hands resting on the worn arms of his father's favorite recliner, now empty. It had only been 3 days since Brandon's father, Ron Gibbs, passed away unexpectedly following complications from a heart condition. The loss had been a blow not only to the family but also to the intricate balance that held Julia and Brandon's relationship together. For years, Julia had struggled to adjust to farm life and the tight-knit dynamic of the Gibbs family. Her journey from Russian go-go dancer to American farm girl had been rocky, filled with early mornings, clucking chickens, meddling in-laws, and culture shock that ran deeper than language. Still, she had stayed, first for Brandon, then for love. But now, something fundamental had shifted. "I don't know who we are without him," Brandon whispered, breaking the silence. Julia turned to him slowly. "We are still us, Brandon. But we have to find out who we are. Now." Grief is a strange architect. It builds walls, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. And within those walls, the couple who once fought so hard to be together were now finding themselves living on opposite sides. Brandon had thrown himself into helping his mother, Betty, navigate this new chapter. He was constantly out on the farm, tending to the chores his father once handled. Julia, meanwhile, felt increasingly like an outsider again. Her attempts to help were often met with a quiet nod or, worse, no acknowledgement at all. Betty, consumed by grief, had grown cold and controlling, reverting to the version of herself that had nearly driven Julia to leave the farm years ago. She insisted Brandon move back into the main house to keep things stable. Julia refused to follow. "This isn't how we do marriage," Julia had said during one of their nightly arguments. "No," Brandon replied, "but this is how I do family." Those words had pierced Julia like a blade. Now, she wandered the property alone more often, her thoughts swirling with doubt. Was their relationship strong enough to survive this loss? Or had the foundation always been more fragile than she'd allowed herself to believe? She began recording her thoughts in Russian, uploading cryptic videos to her Instagram stories. There are moments when you look at the person you love and see a stranger. Not because they changed, but because the world around them did. Fans immediately noticed the tension. Her smile seemed forced in photos. Brandon had gone quiet on social media. Their once bubbly joint TikToks disappeared. Speculation grew. One evening, Julia visited Ron's old greenhouse. Inside, the warm, earthy scent of tomatoes and basil lingered. She sat on an overturned bucket and cried. Not just for Ron, but for everything. For the version of herself who had come to America wide-eyed and hopeful. For the version of Brandon who once promised her the world but now seemed consumed by sorrow and obligation. Ron had been hard on her at first, but over time, he'd grown into her unlikely advocate. He would sneak her Snickers bars when Betty wasn't looking and once told her, "You may not love the land, Julia, but I know you love my boy. And that counts for something."